March 25th, 1992, class with Reverend Ann Hart. First we'll limber up. Shake your arms, hands, shake, rattle, and roll. Wiggle your toes. Pinch your psychic beads from the small finger to the thumb. You can't talk to the thumb. Okay, now the pineal. To the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold, press a little harder. Remember to envision the almond seed. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Hold, press a little harder. To the solar plexus. 13. Peace be still, so mote it be. Okay. You can go ahead with class then.
Well, the organs are right there.
I think your stomach and your, with a woman it's different than a man. Your stomach's right here and the woman.
Your ovaries aren't that high.
Your ovaries are down here. I know, I've had most of it removed. I know where those things are not at the present time. Okay, we're going to study about the Essenes tonight. I just went through here and highlighted, but it was such a good book, so full of information, I've got the whole book highlighted. But I'll just read you what it says. Out of a cloud-shrouded history came the mysterious ones we call the Essenes, and into it they disappeared, like a phantom which briefly but undeniably makes its earthly visitation. So did an entire group of thousands of persons come quietly upon the scenes of man's religious endeavors for apparently fleeting but shining moment in time, and then fade so quickly and completely that only the dimmest trace of them remains. The copper scroll, one of the so-called Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in a cave near the location of the Essene community at Wadi Qumran, is an illustration of the way the Essenes have intrigued moderns with their many mysteries. The unique writing describes the possession and hiding of a treasure of some $200 million. Some say the copper scroll is a collection of symbolic teachings and does not relate to an actual treasure. Others contend the treasure really exists, hidden deep in cisterns under the foundations of buildings which have crumbled into the dust of centuries. Legend insists that at one time the wall surrounding the city of Jerusalem, a gate was named for these unusual people, the Gate of the Essenes. Did this unique segment of humanity willfully and of its own design remain obscure? We might even ask ourselves that if it is possible that they existed for so many centuries, struggled and were tortured and maligned, then vanished, simply to fulfill one grand and majestic purpose related to the ministry of the Master of Nazareth. Were they dedicated to preparing the way for other avatars also? Were their lives consecrated to a higher and nobler purpose than merely their own spiritual progress? Truly may it be said of them that their influence was written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not on tablets of stone, but on the tablets of the living heart. They adhered to the strictest of moral and ethical codes, yet beneath this outer acceptance of surface teachings was the constant surge of the mystical, the miraculous, the esoteric, the prophetic. Some termed them the silent ones. This name stemmed not only from the fact that they engaged in lengthy periods of meditation, but also from their unusual practice of remaining completely silent until their extensive morning rituals and prayers had been completed. No word was spoken during this period, so that attunement to the invisible forces of nature would not be interrupted. This remarkable group of seekers after the mysteries subscribed to a concept known as angelology, or the science of angels, and practiced it by a technique which might be designated as active silence. To the Essenes there were indeed angelic beings of very high order. They petitioned the assistance of these angelic ones, and from them received inspiration in everyday life, as well as the impulse toward exemplification of the highest physical courage and fortitude. The angels were a constant idealistic star guiding the Essenes on their oftentimes perilous journeys through life. They were considered to be emissaries of the Heavenly Father. A second classification of angels was associated with the earthly mother. The allusion here was to the forces and powers of a very superior nature, endowed with a limited measure of intelligence sufficient to make them directable by the conscious expression of man. The practice of silence was filled with the activity of attunement to these angelic energy forces. The Essenes established a complete system of these angels, including the angels of love, wisdom, power, peace, joy, and lesser angels related to all other desirable attributes. During his silence, an Essene would select one of the various forces and attune himself to that angel in such a manner that its properties, qualities, and essences would become transmitted to him and activated within his own being. To enter the active silence, the Essene would disassociate himself through meditation as completely as possible from all normal sensory connections with sights and sounds of the physical plane of life. Secondly, he would, by a direct expression of the consciousness, stimulate the inner supersensory connections with the specific angel or God part of the quality he desired. Thirdly, he would invoke the invisible presence of the angel or vibratory force to which the supersensory connections were being attuned. Fourth, he would consciously direct, in much the same manner as breath is indrawn, the absorption of the quality which the angel expressed. Now, do you understand that last one? Say he wanted the angel of love, okay? He was lacking love in his life or lacking being loving. He would actually picture this angel of love there and just inhale and draw it in, draw in the essence physically. And people do that with healing too. Like there are ways of healing, like if I have stomach trouble, I would picture a banana yellow light all around me and I would inhale that. And I would picture it going up my nostrils and through my body. And you can do that with any light, any color.
Yellow for
Yeah, yellow, banana yellow for the stomach condition. I think it's green for the heart.
blue for the
Blue for the throat, yeah.
orange.
Orange, yeah. So that's what they're talking about.
So color and be involved too, the breath.
Yes, that's in healing though. This is more to the angelology. I can't hardly say that.
I know.
Angelology.
All these books are angels.
Yeah. At times, a few moments would be devoted to each of the several angels. On other occasions, attention would be devoted to but one, depending on the individual's needs at the moment. Attunement to the angel of air would provide the life-giving and exhilarating qualities of the atmosphere, while the angel of light would furnish the higher spiritual essence which it symbolized. Inner association with angels of love, wisdom, and power, and others would cause these various attributes to be inwardly stimulated and strengthened. So in other words, they would call on whatever they needed, whatever angel they needed in their life.
Works.
Yeah. They would get power from that angel, and that angel would actually be there in spirit with them.
But
Yes.
rather than color, when I do that, I just do it with white. And
Well, white is more of a protective,
okay.
whereas the colors will actually do the healing. White, okay, the way I do it is I would inhale the whatever color I wanted, then put blue around for healing to heal everything, that things I'm not aware of, and then put white around as a protective. Nothing can go through white light. Nothing can penetrate it. This process was known as communion. When the Nazarene master met with the disciples for the Last Supper and suggested they eat bread as symbolic of communion with his body or energy forces, and drink the wine as symbolic of communion with his blood or spiritual forces, he was instituting a type of Essenian communion which, if properly understood and practiced with a conscious awareness of its occult significance, would constitute a tremendous power in the lives of those who partake of it. Now, you notice that is still in modern-day religions. The Catholics take communion. We do communion here once a year. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we do. On Circa Primus, we do communion.
You said white bread equals what? Spirit? And the red blood?
Yeah, the white bread, the bread as symbolic of the body or energy forces.
Okay, energy.
And the blood, which was the wine, with the spiritual forces. Okay. It was the Athenian custom to begin the working day at sunrise. Even so, it was preceded by an extended period of prayer and attunement to the various angelic forces needed during the day. The inner spiritual atmosphere thus generated was carried over into all working activities which followed. Now we should do that in the morning when we do our salutation of the dawn. I mean, it's the same thing. It's a quicker attunement. We're not spending hours, but just like drawing in your guides, and it prepares you for the whole day. And everything you do, it makes it a labor of love and joy and spiritual in nature. Immediately prior to the noon meal, the Essenes engaged in a bathing ritual, after which they donned garments of pure white while partaking of their food. This ablution was performed for a far greater purpose than merely washing away the dust of their labors. It was performed in complete silence, but was accompanied by inwardly spoken prayers and a cleansing of the consciousness as well as of the body. The forenoon ritual was the source of the name the morning bathers. Now, I don't know if you've noticed it, but if you've had a particularly negative day, if a lot of things have hit you, if you go in and take a shower, it will wash them away. Now, Spirit has told me that, and it does work. I know if I'm having a really bad day, and I don't care if I've already taken 2 of them, I'll go in and take another one, and it does wash it away. It's more than just cleansing the body. It cleanses the whole aura, the atmosphere, the mind, the consciousness. The rite of baptism, accepted in traditional theological circles as exclusively as a Christian ceremony, undoubtedly arose from the morning bathing practices of the Essenes and their initiatory baptismal rite. John the Baptist, who so pointedly emphasized the baptismal rite, is accredited as being a member of the Essenian order. It is intended first to purify or cleanse both physically and mentally. This is a symbolism of baptism. Its second function is to elevate the one for whom the rite is performed to a higher status of life, or to that state of consciousness in which the greater mysteries are revealed. That's why I was so glad to see your grandchildren be baptized, because it does elevate the individual, and it also allows them to be closer to their guides. It draws in more spirit around them. Actually, it might be said that there are 2 types of baptism. The first of these is initiatory baptism. This is more or less a public ceremony, which establishes contact between the candidate for initiation and the superior spheres of life. It is a type of new birth. It is a supreme moment of spiritual experience in which the individual, through his own higher nature, becomes associated with the higher spheres. It is symbolic of purification, as are all baptisms. But it refers to a higher order of purification than the moral and ethical standards commonly recognized. It is a purified expression of all the higher inner energies. The second type of baptism might be termed a personal baptism. This is a lesser ritual, practiced daily, in which the individual reminds himself of the purification essential to spiritual progress and reestablishes his individual association with the invisible planes and their potencies.
It's called second baptism?
Yeah, personal baptism is the second type of baptism, which is like a daily reminder of what a rededication, a purification. In 1951 and 52, archaeological excavations at Qumran revealed the existence of an Essene community center, an assembly and ritual building. Included meeting rooms, classrooms, kitchen, a room for copying and storing scrolls, Around this building was a series of pools connected by a system of canals in which both the initiatory and personal baptismal rites were performed. A tower at one corner of the building provided a vantage point for a lookout who could warn for the approach of strangers not entitled to receive the inner teachings. You can imagine if you were meditating and in a really spiritual sense, if you were really in spiritual vibration, you would have to have a lookout for the common person not to come in and interrupt and spoil it and ruin it for you.
You said this was discovered somewhere?
Yes, in Qumran.
Where is that?
That is, wait a minute.
Did you guys all catch it? I don't know where it is.
It is, hold on a minute, Wadi Qumran. W-A-D-I.
W-A-D-I.
Capital Q-U-M-R-A-N.
And that was 1950.
51 and 52.
I'll figure out where it is.
Let me see if it says it in here in the introduction.
Below the Dead Sea.
It's near the, I know it's,
Out in England where all these books
Southwestern.
it's in a desert somewhere.
Okay, it doesn't matter. I just figured some kind of country or where.
It's right near the Dead Sea Scrolls where they found them.
Found the Nag Hammond.
I was curious. I'm not that smart.
Goes to Egypt, don't they?
The first
they
book,
in other
yeah.
countries. They refer to Wadi.
Wadi
refer to
means water. Water.
Yeah.
Water.
So what would it mean? A water?
Water.
An oasis?
Is seen
Well,
biogenic.
Right.
Well, we know they were over there somewhere near
yeah.
where Jesus.
Right near where the Dead Sea Scrolls were
Okay.
found, by the Dead Sea there. Right there.
In effect, they were mixed together.
Egypt. Okay, they were mixed together. So
Yeah.
I didn't know that either.
I have that Nag Hammond.
John the Harbinger served as the channel through whom the baptismal rite was transferred from its source among the Essenes to the world in general. This was accomplished through that most auspicious occasion when the Nazarene master approached John and requested baptism for himself. Over John's protests, he insisted upon the performance of this rite, and as a result, he saw the heavens opened and a spirit like a dove descending upon him. Even a voice spoke to him, and thus experiences in angelology were engendered through the practice of the rite of baptism. In addition, John called attention to a higher baptism, which the Nazarene was to inaugurate, baptism by fire, symbolic of a still higher and more spiritual power than baptism by water. Fire is more potent, stronger force than water is. Okay?
This just says the scenes living at the Dead Sea around Lake Mariotis
Okay.
in the first century, but it's south west of the Dead Seas a little bit.
Okay.
But they got pushed and these went off by themselves rather than fight.
Yeah.
They would move, so they did not stay at one spot.
Additional emphasis was thus placed on the symbolic initiatory rite of baptism. Baptism by water is symbolic of purification and progress through experiences in earth. That is something to remember, the word in instead of on. We are in the earth plane expression. We are in it.
Not on.
We're not on it. We're in it.
Like when we say the Our Father.
Yeah, in earth. Say in earth. That is a proper way to say it as a spiritualist. It really is. And when you ask for that in earth, what you're asking for is a blessing for yourself because you are part of the earth. You are asking for a blessing to be inside yourself. Thy will be done in earth. In other words, let me do thy will, dear God. If you think about it in the spiritualist expression. While baptism by fire is symbolic of purification and progress through experiences of a more spiritual nature, the esotericist sees a definite association between water and the etheric substance which the chakras or psychic centers are composed. Thus he understands the baptism as a means of stimulating these centers. In other words, baptism gets the chakras going. It starts them moving. It starts your energy, your spiritual energies going. To be known as the people of the hidden strength is indeed a tribute of the highest order. The Essenes had somehow discovered the secret fountain of power, which surpasses the physical, and were able to draw forth its potent powers. This hidden strength of the Essenes expressed itself in two principal channels. First, the channel of physical courage. In this respect, Flavius Josephus, in a few brief words, presents a striking picture of the hidden strength which the Essenes possessed. In his account of the order, he states that through the exercise of a superior mental will, they seem to be above pain. That is how people do fire walking and walking on nails and laying on a bed of nails and glass. It's because they're in a state of meditation. They're in a state of attunement with the divine, and that is how they are able to do it. I used to be able to, and I don't know if I could do it anymore, but I used to be able to meditate when I was having my teeth fixed, and even with the root canal, and I wouldn't feel anything. But that was years ago, and I don't think I'm strong enough anymore to do it. But I used to be able to do that.
Wouldn't you be more strong now?
I don't know. I'm tireder now, and I'm older, and maybe I don't. See, I don't meditate the same way either. I use a different method, and now I use it strictly for spiritual things, whereas before I was using it for physical things. And now I've got it on the higher level. Maybe I could, but I just don't know. I'm afraid to try it now. But I used to do that for years. But you can meditate yourself into being above pain. Yeah. The second channel of hidden strength relates more definitely to muscular and organic strength, to the outer life rather than the inner. The Essenes were a long-lived people, many of them living from 100 to 120 years. Some believe this was due to the simplicity of their usually vegetarian diet. However, a simple diet does not necessarily guarantee a long life. It just depends on the individual. Was Jesus touching upon this mystery when he said, "I have food to eat that ye not know of"? Assuredly, he was referring to the fact that there are other than physical appetites by which man is sustained. In today's world, such possibilities are graphically indicated by various types of vegetation which exist without food or water, drawing their entire sustenance from the atmosphere. There's a tribe somewhere, and I can't remember where it is. Maybe you've heard of it. I believe they're called the Aryans or something. And they live on nothing but air. They do not eat anything. They inhale. They don't drink. They inhale. And they are alive. And they are over in some remote island. Reverend Tingley told me about that. The Essenes evidently knew of this invisible food and the method of drawing it from the cosmic granaries. The modern mystic contends that life-sustaining substance can be drawn from the ethers, and that this is the food of which the Nazarene spoke. When properly directed in relation to the invisible energies, the same superior will which enabled the Essene to live above pain also enabled him to assimilate life-giving properties from the ethers. So it can be done. What's that?
That's the way we're supposed to be, all of us that are physical. If we go higher consciousness, we become lighter.
Right.
Of course, we have to, like we're always going through it, about our food. We don't eat the heavy stuff. We're going to the lighter and lighter stuff, which a lot of us now are finding we can't eat pork.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do a lot of things we used to be able to do.
Right.
You said a little bit about it last night. Well, in one of these books it says it takes you 7 years to go without like red meat, like cow and pork, and it's supposed to be worse than cow meat.
Blood will soon be not.
And then you go 7 years without that, but you can eat fish and chicken and turkey. And then you go 7 years
Without those.
Without those.
Mhm.
And then you go into the vegetables and fruits, and then you go 7 years and only into the fruits.
Yeah, I believe in that.
But it takes you 21 years
Mm-hmm.
to.
Speeding that up the way
Yeah.
I understand it now. It isn't going to be no 7 years.
I'm going to next week bring a thing about
Not what I'm
diet that Dr. Taylor dictated in the seance room.
uh,
And I will bring that in, the spiritualist interpretation.
come to me through. And
Fit
that
for life.
Vegetables and fruits for
Mhm.
$8, and then and whatever. And this was down at Chesterfield, I found. It all come boom.
Mhm.
I was telling them, and I got to go back on it because
You have to do whatever is right for the individual.
Right.
Whatever is right for the individual. And a person like a man that does a lot of physical labor, well, in the Aquarian Gospel, it says that he should eat meat if he does physical labor. But of course, that was written way back, or translated from way back when. So anyway, it's an individual thing. But I do know-
You'll get sick on the other, and you'll be
Yeah, you
forced
get
into-
sick.
I'm being forced into
Yeah,
it. Literally, I have been. I've been fighting it for 10 years.
yeah, I believe you because I have been. I was just telling Corrine the other day. I have been throwing up every day for at least 4 years, and finally I got a healing for it, and I'm eating less and less meat, very little meat,
That's what I mean.
and I have stopped throwing up for the first time in 4 years.
I threw up 2 days and quit eating meat. I learned that.
I'm a slow learner. I've got a hard head. I didn't figure it out.
But this just happened to all three of us since
And your daughter,
January.
Mhm.
too, was back.
But it
All of
happened,
us.
and we didn't tell
Yeah,
each
no.
other at
Uh-huh.
first.
It's a guide, or it's where we're going, or whatever it is, or on our path, wherever we've reached a point, or something.
Well, there's a thing about the auras blending when you're friends, or when you love someone, when you're married to them, or when you're friends. The auras blend and you become alike. There's a matching of the auras, and you all will get the same impressions and feel the same way about things, and
Yeah, no, even my daughter, she'd come across and didn't want meat. Now, a lot of these littler ones, my granddaughter, I don't think will have meat either now.
Mhm.
And I think what it is they're coming across with this higher vibration, or wherever they've been. That she never wanted meat, my daughter. She
Mhm.
just wanted, vegetarian or fruit plate.
Yeah.
Go into a restaurant, could have anything, fruit plate, and then she'd just eat maybe shrimp or eat fish. Never ate
right.
red meat.
I understand.
Pork, can't stand pork.
My daughter's the same way. She's a total vegetarian, has been for many years. It's so funny because when she was little, the meat prices were very high. And I was kind of a radical, and I led a meat march against the grocery stores, and I had all these people picketing and everything all over Sandusky. And I had Meredith in my grocery cart. She was so little she would fit right in there. And I'm walking up and down with my picket sign with Meredith. And then we were vegetarians for quite a while. Well, then her father wouldn't have it, so
The
we
wild
stopped.
part, our
But she went back to
great-grandmas
it.
and my mom and dad and my grandma and grandpa and them, they butchered all the time, and you had pork steak for breakfast. You had pork all the time and everything.
Yeah,
But now it seems like the ones coming through,
yeah. I think it's such a lower vibration. Well, they fed the Roman legions, I may have mentioned this before, raw meat, raw beef before they went into battle to bring out the aggressiveness and the hostility in the lower.
I know I'm irritable when I eat wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Today there's something wrong, I can tell.
Okay, therefore, and they made the initiation into the order an extremely difficult one. First, they tested the perseverance of the candidate for initiation during a 3-year probationary period. During that time, he assumed many of the modes of living adopted by the regular members without being given any of the inner secrets. So he just had to go kind of on faith and see if he could hang in there, which is a lot what happens here. It'll be on the individual merits on whether a person goes to class or is invited to class or goes to a seance or is initiated into those type of things. There is a written list of steps for a spiritualist to go through before they are allowed in the seance room. I don't know where it is. I haven't seen it for years, but I did have one time. I might be able to dig one up. But there is a list of things what he must do first. And this is so much of the Essenes. Well, as I read this book, I noticed the similarities between spiritualism and the Essenes. The spiritualism is so similar. I mean, they have taken so much from the Essenes. If during this probationary period the candidate was able to live according to the strict disciplines, it was deemed that he would be able to live the life of an Essene, which necessitated a constant use of hidden strength, or to put it in other words, life's invisible energies. That's what we're calling on here as spiritualists. We're calling on the angels and the God force and everything, and that's what we're doing. We're living with accordance to life's invisible energies. To be firm but not forward was an Essenian precept, which gained for them the title of the modest ones. Very little of the true nature of the Essenes was ever known to their contemporaries. That so little concerning them has been recorded in history is due to the fact that their order was a secret society, just like our class here is a secret society. Yeah, I did. When I read this, I thought, I know there was a reason. I knew.
And is that why some of them will
Masons
be
are that
dropping
way.
out?
Masons.
Because they're not ready.
They're not ready?
The ones that drop out are not ready. Anytime you form a class, you've got to expect dropouts. People that are not ready for the teachings, that don't understand them, that can't assimilate them, it's way over their heads, they're going to drop
Or
out.
they'll sleep. I've seen some go
Yeah, that's
they're
really
sleeping,
funny.
so they're
Yeah, they're
I've
totally...
had that happen with some of the people. And I didn't know if they should go with me or not. And they went to Coptic.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry, they said. They slept right through the real high stuff.
It can be another reason, too. Sometimes it goes directly into the subconscious that
Maybe
way.
that's what it is. I don't know.
Reverend Tingley always says when somebody sleeps through a sermon, he considers it a compliment because they're getting it right into their subconscious.
Well, now, sometimes I can hear better with my eyes shut.
Yeah.
My hands keep going like that. I'm not
He don't sleep. He's
Right.
meditating. Ozzy is meditating and gone. He's like a master. He's potent.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying about some of these negative people, or I don't mean wrong to say a negative, unready. Would that be the word?
Yeah,
That want to
underdeveloped.
come along and not miss anything.
Right, and they're not ready for it.
There you go.
That's why they drop out, that's why they're not here, or whatever the case may be. Okay, because of this, no one could tell or write their activities until he became a member. And anyone who became a member did so with such complete dedication that he had no desire to reveal any of the inner teachings. Thus they became known as the mysterious or the secret ones. Their instructions and esoteric teachings were not available to everyone, but were reserved only for the receptive ears of those who had proved themselves worthy through study, discipline, and adherence to the Society's strict regulations over its extended periods of time. Many of the teachings of the Essenes were presented to members only in the Hadoth, H-A-D-O-T-H, or secret meeting, H-A-D-O-T-H. The only persons allowed to attend the Hadoth were those who had passed through the 3 degrees of the order. At the conclusion of 1 year's membership, the candidate was permitted to wear the characteristic white clothing, which was a distinguishing mark of the Essenes.
And wasn't it out of linen?
I'm sure it probably was. They don't mention that in here, but I'm sure it was. However, more profound teachings were not yet available to him. Through the 2nd year, he lived in accordance with most of the order's customs. It was not until the conclusion of the 3rd probationary membership year that he was presented with the signs of recognition, which identified him as a full-fledged Essene to his brethren wherever he might travel, and then he was accorded with the final honor of being admitted into the Hadoth, where the deeper mysteries were unfolded, and the strictest but most effective techniques for attunement to the invisible were taught. So they went through a lot, and they had to be very dedicated. And really, I'll tell you, if we learn by the teachings of Reverend Tingley, and we follow what we've been told, we can develop so beautifully, and we will be ready for higher things, and there's no limit to the mediumship that can be developed. The Hadoth was conducted by 3 teachers who were selected for their wisdom and their expertise at Essenian practices. The principal teacher was the rabbin, or Rabboni, which means master. Rabban.
That's what Mary said to Jesus when he came
That's
back.
right, master.
Yeah,
Rabboni.
That's
Rabboni,
true.
yeah. The rabbin presented the mysteries, many of them so profound as to require repeated interpretation and explanation, by his first assistant, known as the rabbi, or teacher.
First assistant's rabbi.
Yeah, or teacher. That's the translation. He in turn was assisted in his duties by the Rab, R-A-B, or assistant teacher. These three were the spiritual leaders of the Essenian group with which they were associated, and they are not to be confused with the stewards who supervised the material endeavors in which the group engaged. Prophetically or otherwise forewarned of approaching Roman legions, the Essenes begin the dispersal of their magnificent library of scriptures and teachings. Fulfilling their pledge to guard well the secrets of the order and to preserve the sacred books, the Essenes sealed many of their manuscripts or scrolls in pottery jars, especially made for that purpose, and hid them in nearby caves or buried them in underground crypts. The Essenes were considered the forerunners of modern Freemasonry, a society which also holds many of its teachings secret.
That's what I was going to say.
Mhm.
My brother's going into that right now.
Uh-huh, that's a good thing. Wasn't
He
Bob
doesn't even know
Thompson
what
in
it's
that?
about. I know more about it
He's
than
being
he does.
drawn
Keep
to
my
it.
mouth shut.
Yeah, he's being drawn. He's being led.
He does, yeah.
Some of the symbols in Masonry are identical with those used by the Essenes in the presentation of their teachings. The individual Essene was instructed to enter the closet or inner chamber and to pray to the Father in secret. In other words, that's a lot like our seance room, isn't it? It's the same thing. So many of these things are just parallel with spiritualism. So I know it's based in the Essenian teachings. Apparently the Essenes did not neglect any of the esoteric arts, but devoted their attention to all of them, including the science of numbers and various mathematical symbols. The Essenes have also directed much of their attention to the Kabbalah, or secret key to the Scriptures. It was their custom regularly to interpret the Scriptures, giving hidden meanings not ordinarily observed in accordance with these secret keys. Jim always says, I'll give you a key that unlocks a box of keys. And he says that there are keys in the Bible on how to read it and how to interpret that in the proper way it's meant. To read the Bible as a spiritualist and to ask your guides to help you. They were what we would term in modern time Kabbalists. I can't say it. Q-A. There's no U in it, that's why I can't say it. Kabbalists, okay.
Q-U-A.
They didn't put a U in it, that's why I had a hard time. Q-A-B-B-A-L-I-S-T-S. Or users Q-A-B-B-A-L-I-S-T-S. There's no U, which threw me off.
Did you say he said he has a key of boxes?
He says, I have a
But
key,
his key opens.
a box of keys. In other words, he'll give you the start, and then it opens a box with many more things, and it never ends. The science, religion, and philosophy never ends. There's no ending to it. Or users of the secret key to understand and propound the Scriptures. In matters of ethics and morals, the Essenes were respected above all people. Their word was their bond. It was never necessary to insist that Essene make a formal contract in a business dealing. One would always accept his word and know that it would be carried out to the very letter. The everyday lives and business ethics of the Essenes marked them as different and separate from all the people of their times, and merited for them the two names which indicated in high regard in which others held them, the pious and the holy men. In other words, spiritualism teaches us too, be very above board in your business dealings.
Above what now?
Above board. Be honest. Be honest. Be totally strict to the letter in your business dealings, because that's what you're going to get back. And because it helps spirit to come through to you, because they don't allow shady stuff. There's no edging or hedging or,
You don't.
It has to be to the letter. If you owe a debt, pay it. If you possibly can. You have to anyway. I mean, one way or another, you're going to.
Tell me the author.
The author is Robert G. Cheney. You've heard of Robert and Earlene Cheney that started Astera? That's who it is.
How you
It's
spell
Robert
that?
Cheney. Chaney. Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
He's part of that group called Astera.
The Essenes ascribed all things to God. They believed in immortality and that righteousness brings rewards well worth the striving. They believed in tithing, but abhorred the prevailing custom of bringing animal sacrifices to worship. So in other words, they believed in that 10% of whatever, and I believe in that. I know one thing. You cannot make a bargain with God. You give your 10% because you know that it's a proper thing to do. It's the teachings, and you will be surprised at where that 10% or 20% or 30% will come back to you. And it always does. It sure does. Tenfold or sevenfold or whatever it is, it'll come back to you. And one thing I want to mention is don't ever close your avenues of receiving money in this life. We need money. It's a physical world. So don't ever close your avenues. Don't say, I work this job 8 hours a day, that's my only income. Never, never, never limit yourself. Say, I accept from the universal or divine bounty anything which God can send to me. And I appreciate it and I thank you for it. And don't leave any of your avenues closed. I know every time I run short on money, I'm always doing something with it. I can't seem to hold on to it. I'll get a check in the mail or something fortuitous that'll happen, or somebody will call me with a reading party of like 10 people, and I'll get, every time. I mean, I've given a lot of money to the church, and I've always gotten it all back or more, or else I didn't need it, But I always get it back, and that's not why I do it. That's the trick. You can't do it with that in mind. You have to do it willingly and without a condition. It has to be given freely and joyfully. Groups of Essenes would often band together in cooperatives, owning possessions in common, and giving all revenue into the hands of the elected stewards. The various affairs of the order were determined at a session of the many, a meeting attended by every member, at which every member was entitled to a vote as he pleased. Prayers were offered each day before sunrise, and no subject would be discussed before these prayers were completed. Grace before and after meals, which is usually ignored in our day, was carried out to its highest purpose. Its purpose was to assist in the process of supplying the mundane substance with a spiritual quality before it was assimilated into the life or being of the one who ate it or partook of it. The Nazarene followed a similar procedure when he blessed the bread and the wine upon the occasion of the Last Supper. Another thing, we pray so that we are holy, we are a part of God, we are divine sparks. We pray over our food, we bless it, so that it is assimilated in that sense. We make it higher than what it is. It is of the earth. We're making it spiritual when we bless it. There were some people that believed blessing it took out any poisons that were in it at one time. It will take out anything that's impure. Yes.
When a king was testing somebody in the Bible, one of the disciples,
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of the name now, and he said, well, if your God is so good, he'll let you drink this.
Mm-hmm.
And the disciple blessed it, and he drank it, and he did not die. I just read that in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the disciples. But then when he did that, then the king changed over and believed
Mm-hmm.
in the God.
That's good.
Yeah, I went to read there.
Another thing to do when you bless your food, tell it to go to the proper place and do its proper job.
Whatever you're not supposed to have.
When
Don't
you
go
do
on
that,
my hips and look like fat, you know.
You eat less. You just say, let me eat how much I need.
Yeah, that's right.
And you eat less.
Yes. But just a simple blessing, with if you have the original thoughts of all those things in mind, a simple blessing will take care of that for you.
That's what we're supposed to come back to, and that's how we live, like this. See.
Yes, I believe that.
This is what they say, the little basic things. This is what it is. Change is happening.
I believe that.
It's good topic.
The prayer known as the Lord's Prayer actually is a fragment of instruction given through Athenian concepts. I'm not going to go through that. Well, maybe I will. How much time do we have? I'm afraid that I'm just going to... Thy will be done, says the prayer, and the Essene devoted his entire life to accomplishing the will of his heavenly Father. Thine is the eternal kingdom, states the prayer, or thine is the kingdom. The Essene believed that that which is accomplished with the hands on earth, while it maintains a certain status of importance, is not eternal. In other words, the physical passes away. The real thing is the eternal, is the spiritual. And the power and glory forever. The Essene recognized the essences and radiations of the invisible planes as the eternal power of the Heavenly Father, which was forever existence. The Essene believed in immortality and that the soul was somehow formed from a mysterious breath drawn into the body and there incarcerated as though in a prison. Don't you ever feel like that? Like you're being incarcerated in your physical body and you're crying to get out and go into the spirit world? I know I have. And it's not right, real. It is and it isn't. It's natural.
Babies are that way. My little granddaughter was pistol.
We are really incarcerated in this physical body. We really are. It's like a prison for us until we learn our lessons. And I think that's one of the reasons it's so wrong for suicide or anything like that, because we have got to learn those lessons.
Well, astral traveling, we get out.
Yeah, that's true.
We get out where I don't feel...
But not everybody does astral travel. How many people are aware of it? You know, or how many people really do it? For most part, humanity is imprisoned until their time is up here. I've seen people, when I worked at the nursing home, I worked there for 4 years, or 4.5, something like that. Anyway, they begged to die. They begged to be let out of their bodies. And they couldn't because they were fulfilling some karmic debt. That's what I always believed, that it was some karmic
It
thing.
has to be a karmic debt.
It has to be.
Because, so many of them, I'm sorry to say this, are of no use to anybody.
That's right.
They can't do anything.
Right. They can't even eat or go to the bathroom. Yeah.
And her, Helen, how many years?
My God.
She was on a bed, not even knowing how to eat.
Right. Those are the kind of people I took care of. I took care of people that were stiff like this, just rigid, like rigor mortis had already set in. And they were like that for years. And they are just imprisoned in that body until they learn, until maybe it gives them time to think. Did you ever think that a stroke victim, it gives them time to think without opening their mouth?
Even the people
You know,
that are
it
paralyzed.
doesn't do them any good.
Also,
Can't
it's karma on the
move
ones
their
who are
eye.
there to serve them.
Yeah, it's
Yes, it
like-
is.
My mother
That's
hardly
right.
talks at all, but she's one of the biggest
Lesson givers.
blessings there, and what do they tune into her?
Sure.
What she is.